Imagine waking up on a mattress so itchy it feels like it's crawling, because, well, it is. There's no alarm clock, just the delightful aroma of yesterday's chamber pot wafting up from the alley, mixed with a hint of burning dung. Good morning. You're in the 14th century now. You've seen the movies, right? Gleaming armor, elegant feasts, kings tossing grapes into their mouths while bards sing nearby. Yeah, forget all that. The real Middle Ages were less Game of Thrones and more. You just got dysentery from your breakfast. Before you get too cozy in your modern chair, sipping sanitized water and adjusting your screen brightness, let's play a little game. Could you survive even one day in a medieval town? Because here's the deal. Back then, soap was rare, privacy didn't exist, and your biggest threat wasn't war. It was bread. Yes, actual bread, laced with a fun little toxin that caused hallucinations and sometimes death. Enjoy your toast. So hit that like button, but only if you're grateful for antibiotics and indoor plumbing. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And would you have lasted until noon in the Middle Ages? Dim the lights, brace yourself, and let's walk together through a single, brutal, and absolutely unforgettable day in one of the most misunderstood periods in human history. You might survive the first hour, but breakfast might kill you. You open your eyes to darkness. The only light filters through tiny cracks in the wooden shutters, casting thin golden lines across the packed earth floor. It's not the sun that woke you, but the distant toll of church bells, their bronze voices echoing across the sleepy town. Dawn is breaking in medieval Europe, and you're about to experience what daily life was truly like. Not the romanticized version from storybooks, but the authentic, gritty reality of the 14th century. Your back aches from the straw mattress beneath you, stuffed into a rough linen sack that serves as your bed. The sweet, earthy scent of dried hay mingles with the mustier notes of the tiny chamber you call home. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb others sleeping nearby. Privacy is a luxury in this era, and your humble dwelling houses not just your family but sometimes a goat or chicken as well, brought inside during colder months for their precious body warmth. The morning air carries a distinct chill that seeps through the cracks in the walls. There's no central heating here, just the lingering warmth from last night's hearth fire, now reduced to softly glowing embers that cast a faint, comforting red glow in the corner. Stretching your arms above your head, you feel the rough texture of your linen nightshirt against your skin. You've slept in your clothes, partly for warmth, partly because undressing completely is uncommon in this time when modesty and practicality reign supreme. Your feet touch the cool earth floor as you rise. In wealthier homes, floors might be covered with rushes or straw, sometimes sprinkled with herbs like lavender or rosemary to mask less pleasant odors. But your humble abode is simpler. The sound of stirring comes from the corner where your children sleep, a rustling of straw and soft, sleepy murmurs. In the medieval world, children aren't separated by age as they might be today. The family sleeps together, lives together, works together. You make your way to the small wooden bucket near the door. This is your morning washing station. No elaborate bathroom, no running water. Just rainwater collected yesterday, now slightly cloudy in the dim light. Cupping your hands, you splash the cool water on your face. The shock of it fully wakes you, water dripping down your chin as you reach for a rough linen cloth to pat your skin dry. This simple act is your entire morning hygiene routine. There's no toothpaste waiting. Instead, you might rub your teeth with a frayed twig, its end chewed to create a primitive brush. Some people use mixtures of herbs and salt to freshen their breath, while others simply rinse with water or chew mint leaves. Your hair feels greasy to the touch. Washing it is a monthly affair at best, especially in winter when the thought of cold water on your scalp is far from appealing. Instead, you smooth it back and cover it with a simple linen cap. Women in medieval times, regardless of status, typically covered their hair. For you, it's a simple linen coif that ties under your chin. More affluent women might have elaborate headdresses, but the principle remains the same. Hair, especially for married women, is rarely displayed. Outside, the village is coming alive. Through the single small window, you catch glimpses of movement, shadows passing by as fellow villagers begin their day. Time to join them and start your own daily tasks. You dress quickly, layering for warmth and practicality. First comes your chemise, a simple linen undergarment that covers you from shoulders to ankles. Over this, you don a kirtle, a long-fitted dress of wool, dyed a modest brown with walnut husks. The wool is scratchy against your skin, nothing like the soft fabrics of modern times, but it's durable and warm, two qualities that matter far more than comfort in this age. Your fingers work quickly to lace up the front of the garment. A leather belt cinches your waist, from which hang small essentials, perhaps a pouch containing a few precious coins, a knife for eating and working, or a set of keys if you're responsible for household stores. These hanging items swing gently as you move. Footwear is simple but vital. Leather shoes with thin soles that have molded to the shape of your feet through constant wear. They're showing signs of repair, carefully stitched in places where they've worn through. Good shoes are valuable. You take care of them. Finally, you wrap a shawl around your shoulders, additional warmth against the morning chill. It's woven from homespun wool, perhaps one you made yourself during the long winter evenings by the fire, when darkness fell early and sleep was not yet calling. Before stepping outside, you stoke the hearth fire, adding small sticks to the embers and gently blowing until flames reappear. This fire is precious. It cooks your food, warms your home, and provides light. Letting it die out completely would mean borrowing fire from a neighbor or using a flint and steel. The door creaks as you push it open, revealing the world of medieval morning. The narrow dirt street before you buzzes with early activity. No paved roads here, just well-worn earth that turns to mud when it rains and dust when it's dry. The smell hits you immediately, a complex layering of scents both pleasant and foul. There's the earthiness of livestock, the sharp tang of wood smoke from breakfast fires, and yes, the unmistakable note of human waste. Sanitation is rudimentary at best. You might wrinkle your nose at this last element, but to medieval senses, these smells are simply the backdrop of life. What might overwhelm modern nostrils is barely noticed by those who know no different. The sound of the town waking surrounds you, roosters crowing, people calling to one another, the distant clang of the blacksmith's hammer already at work. Medieval mornings start early, with first light. There are no electric lights to extend the day, so daylight is precious. You make your way carefully down the narrow street. No sidewalks separate pedestrians from the center of the road, where you must watch for horse droppings, discarded food scraps, and the occasional contents of chamber pots that less considerate neighbors might have emptied from upper windows. "Good morrow," calls a neighbor, a woman about your age carrying a wooden bucket toward the town well. You return the greeting with a nod and a smile. Community is everything in medieval times. These are the people who will help you raise a barn, care for you in illness, celebrate festivals alongside you. The church bells toll again, marking the hour of prime, around 6 a.m. by modern reckoning. Your day is measured not by clock time, but by these canonical hours: matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, and compline. The rhythm of devotion structures everyone's lives, whether deeply religious or not. Your stomach reminds you it's time for breaking your fast, what we now call breakfast. But don't expect anything elaborate. The first meal of the day is simple in medieval times. Often just a piece of bread and perhaps some ale if you're fortunate. You head toward the communal oven, where the village baker has been working since well before dawn. The smell of fresh bread draws you forward, one of the true pleasures of medieval life. For a small fee, or perhaps in exchange for some of your own grain, you can purchase a loaf. The bread is hearty and dense, made from rye or barley rather than refined wheat, which is reserved for the wealthy. It's dark in color and has a chewy crust that requires healthy teeth and strong jaws, another reason why dental problems are common. To wash down your bread, you might sip small beer, a lightly fermented drink with very low alcohol content. It seems strange to modern sensibilities to drink beer for breakfast, but water sources are often contaminated, making fermented drinks a safer option. With your simple breakfast in hand, you find a place to sit on a bench outside your dwelling. The morning sun feels good on your face, warming you as you eat, and watch the village come fully to life around you. Children dart between houses, already tasked with morning chores, collecting eggs, feeding animals, or carrying messages. Childhood in medieval times is not a protected status of play and education. Even young children work as soon as they're able. You notice a group of men gathering near the edge of town, tools in hand. They're likely heading to the fields for a day of agricultural labor. The rhythm of the seasons dictates the work: planting, tending, harvesting, and nearly everyone participates in food production. Your own day's work beckons. Perhaps you're a craftswoman, a weaver, spinner, brewer, or baker. Maybe you assist your husband in his trade as a blacksmith, carpenter, or tanner. Or most likely you manage the complex duties of a household while also working in gardens and fields. If you're of the peasant class, your hands are already calloused from years of labor. Work is not something you do, it's what you are. There's no retirement, no weekends, just the constant cycle of tasks that sustain life, broken only by Sundays and holy days. You rise, brushing crumbs from your lap. They fall to the ground where chickens peck at them immediately. Nothing goes to waste in this world of scarcity. Every resource is precious. Every leftover reused or repurposed. The town is fully awake now, and you weave your way through increasingly crowded streets. If you live in a larger town, you might pass by market stalls being set up, their vendors arranging wares, vegetables from nearby farms, simple pottery, iron tools, or perhaps fabrics from distant lands if you're in a town of trade. The sound of hooves on the packed earth draws your attention. A nobleman passes on horseback, his clothing immediately marking his status. While you wear simple wool and muted colors, he sports vibrant blue and red garments, their dyes alone worth more than you might earn in months. You lower your eyes respectfully as he passes. The social hierarchy is strict and unquestioned, from peasants to craftspeople to merchants to nobility to royalty. Each person knows their place in this divinely ordained structure, or so the church teaches. Speaking of the church, its spire dominates the town skyline. The most impressive building by far, the local church represents not just spiritual authority, but temporal power as well. The parish priest is among the most educated people you'll encounter. As morning progresses, you turn your attention to your daily tasks. If you're a householder, this might mean tending to your vegetable garden, a crucial source of food for your family. Unlike modern ornamental gardens, every plant here serves a purpose. Cabbages, onions, leeks, garlic, beans, and peas form the backbone of your plot. Herbs grow along the edges, not just for flavoring, but for medicine as well. Rosemary, sage, thyme, and mint each have properties to treat common ailments. You kneel in the soft earth, using a simple wooden tool to remove weeds from around your precious plants. The soil feels cool and damp between your fingers. This connection to the earth is direct and constant in medieval life, far from the separation many experience in modern times. Nearby, your chickens scratch and peck. They're smaller than modern breeds, more like wildfowl, but they provide precious eggs and occasional meat. You scatter grain for them, saved from your own stores, and check the simple wooden boxes where they lay. The sun climbs higher, warming your back as you work. Time for a mid-morning break, perhaps another piece of bread, or if you're fortunate, a small piece of cheese. Dairy products are common in medieval diets, though they bear little resemblance to their modern counterparts. Cheese is a way of preserving milk in an era without refrigeration. It's typically hard, sharp, and sometimes pungent. The soft, mild cheeses familiar to modern palates would be unrecognizable luxuries to your medieval self. As noon approaches, the church bells ring again, calling the faithful to prayer. Even if you don't attend the service, you might pause briefly in your work, perhaps making the sign of the cross. Religion infuses every aspect of medieval life. The concept of separate spiritual and secular realms doesn't exist. The church calendar determines festivals and fast days. Religious images decorate even humble homes. Saints are as real to you as your neighbors. Their intervention sought for everything from toothaches to good harvests. Midday brings the main meal of the day, dinner as it would be called. More substantial than breakfast, it still bears little resemblance to modern feasts. A typical meal might center around pottage, a thick soup of vegetables and grains, simmered in the cooking pot that hangs over your hearth fire. If your family is prosperous, small pieces of salted meat might find their way into the pot, adding flavor and precious protein. Pork is common among those who can afford meat. Nearly every part of the pig is used, from the meat to the fat to the intestines for sausage casings. Bread accompanies the meal, used not just for eating but as an edible utensil. Trenchers, flat pieces of bread, might serve as plates, soaking up the juices of your meal and eaten afterward. For most people, wooden spoons are the only eating implements. You sit with your family to eat, perhaps on benches at a simple trestle table. Mealtime conversation centers around practical matters. Work to be done, weather conditions, local news. Children eat what adults eat. There's no concept of special children's food. The meal is flavored with salt if you can afford it, along with herbs from your garden. Pepper and exotic spices are luxuries reserved for the wealthy. Your medieval palate is accustomed to simpler flavors, though not necessarily bland ones. After eating, there might be a brief period of rest during the hottest part of the day, especially in summer. But it's soon back to work. The rhythm of medieval life follows the sun, not the clock. Afternoon tasks might differ depending on the season. In spring, there's planting to be done. Summer brings weeding and early harvests. Fall is the busiest time, with major harvests and preservation work. Winter means indoor tasks, spinning, weaving, repairing tools. Today, perhaps your work includes spinning, turning raw wool or flax into thread. You use a drop spindle, a simple but effective tool consisting of a stick with a weighted whirl at the bottom. With practiced movements, you draw out fibers and twist them into strong thread. The repetitive motion is almost meditative, allowing your mind to wander as your hands work automatically. This is when stories might be shared, songs sung, or prayers recited. Many hands make light work, as the saying goes. If you're in a larger town, you might take your spun thread to sell at market, or to a weaver who will transform it into cloth. The medieval economy operates largely on barter and trade rather than currency for common folk. As the sun begins its descent, the quality of light changes, golden rays slanting through the trees and between buildings. You begin to think about the evening meal, supper, a lighter repast than the midday dinner. Leftover pottage might be reheated, perhaps with the addition of new vegetables or herbs to refresh it. Waste is rare in the medieval kitchen. Every scrap has a purpose, whether as food for people, animals, or compost for the garden. The tools of your kitchen are simple but effective. A cooking pot, perhaps a frying pan, wooden utensils, knives and bowls. They're made to last, passed down through generations, and repaired rather than replaced when damaged. Your cooking fire requires constant attention. Too hot and food burns quickly. Too cool and it never cooks properly. You've learned through experience exactly how to maintain the right temperature, adding wood or adjusting the pot's height as needed. As you prepare the evening meal, you might send a child to the town well for fresh water. The well is a social center as much as a utility, where news is exchanged and community bonds strengthened. Your child returns not just with water but with the latest town gossip. Supper is a quieter affair than dinner, often eaten as daylight fades. Candles and rushlights are precious, used sparingly. Their flickering glow creates pools of warm light in the growing darkness of your home. The family gathers close around the hearth as evening deepens. This is a time for stories, for planning the next day's work, for simple handicrafts like wood carving or sewing that can be done by firelight. Children might be taught their letters if your family is fortunate enough to have some education. Literacy is far from universal, but basic reading might be passed down, especially prayers and religious texts deemed important for salvation. As true darkness falls, you prepare for sleep. The day has been long, your body tired from physical labor. There are no books to read before bed, no television to watch. Sleep comes quickly to those who have worked from dawn to dusk. Before retiring, you bank the fire carefully, covering coals with ashes to preserve them until morning. Starting a new fire is difficult and time-consuming. Keeping one alive is far preferable. You check that animals are secure, doors latched, children settled. The rituals of bedtime are ancient and practical, ensuring safety through the vulnerable hours of darkness. Prayer might be your final act before sleep. Simple words asking for protection through the night, for good weather tomorrow, for continued health. In a world with limited medical knowledge, divine intervention seems as reliable as any remedy. As you settle onto your straw mattress, the darkness is nearly complete. No streetlights shine through your window. No distant glow of a city on the horizon. On moonless nights, the darkness is profound in a way few modern people ever experience. The sounds of night surround you, the soft breathing of family members, the occasional rustle of animals, the creak of wooden timbers cooling after the day's heat. These familiar sounds are comforting, markers of a normal, secure world. You pull rough woolen blankets around you against the night chill. Sleep comes quickly to your tired body, your mind already planning tomorrow's tasks as consciousness fades. And so ends a typical day in your medieval life. A day governed by sunlight and seasons, by physical necessities and community bonds, by faith and tradition. Different in countless ways from modern existence, yet connected by the basic human needs for food, shelter, companionship, and meaning. Morning comes again with surprising swiftness. The cycle begins anew as you open your eyes to the dim light filtering through shutters. Your body feels the previous day's work in stiff joints and tired muscles. But there's no time to linger in bed. The church bells ring, calling the faithful to morning prayers. Whether you attend or not, their sound structures your day, telling you it's time to rise and begin again the complex dance of medieval survival. Today might bring subtle variations to your routine. Perhaps it's baking day, when the communal oven is fired to its hottest and households take turns bringing their dough to be transformed into the staff of life. Baking day is a community affair, a chance for women especially to gather and exchange news while waiting for their turn at the oven. The scent of fresh bread permeates the entire village, a simple pleasure shared by all. Your dough has been prepared the night before, a mixture of rye flour, water, and sourdough starter carefully preserved from the previous baking. It's risen slowly overnight, developing flavors that make your mouth water in anticipation. You carry your shaped loaves on a wooden board to the oven, greeting neighbors along the way. The baker judges when the oven is ready, its stones heated to the perfect temperature before the first breads go in. While waiting, you might trade small items with neighbors, some of your onions for their carrots, information about where the best berries are ripening, offers to help with upcoming tasks that require many hands. This informal economy of favors and barter is as important as any market transaction. The goodwill of neighbors is a currency that can't be hoarded, but must be constantly circulated through acts of reciprocity. When your bread emerges from the oven, crusty and aromatic, there's a moment of pride and satisfaction. Good bread is a skill passed down through generations, a craft as important as any other in medieval life. You carry your loaves home carefully, their warmth radiating through the cloth that covers them. They'll form the backbone of your family's sustenance for the coming days. To be eaten fresh at first, then as days pass, dipped in broth to soften, and finally perhaps crumbled into pottage when stale. The rhythm of your days is punctuated by weekly events as well. Sunday brings church services that everyone is expected to attend. More than religious obligation, this is social gathering, political forum, and news exchange all in one. The parish church is the heart of community life. Its walls are painted with vivid scenes from scripture and saints' lives, visual teaching for a largely illiterate population. The smell of incense, the sound of Latin chants, the rare and precious colored light through stained glass, all create an atmosphere utterly different from daily existence. For a brief time each week, you step out of the earthbound struggle for survival and into a space that hints at divine splendor. Whatever your personal faith, the sensory experience of medieval worship is powerful and transporting. After services, there might be announcements about community matters, upcoming feast days, work projects requiring collective effort, news from the wider world brought by travelers or messengers from the Lord's estate. The weekly market often coincides with Sunday, when people are already gathered in town. You might browse the stalls after church, seeing what goods are available, what prices are being asked, who has surplus to trade. Most transactions involve barter rather than coins, which are scarce among common folk. Your homespun thread might be traded for salt, your excess eggs for a new knife blade, your skilled labor promised in exchange for materials you need. Medieval markets are sensory experiences. The calls of vendors, the bleating of livestock, the vibrant colors of dyed cloths, the aromatic spices from distant lands that most can only admire but never afford to purchase. You recognize everyone in the market. There are few strangers in medieval community life, where mobility is limited and generations often live and die within miles of their birthplace. This creates both security and limitation. You're known, protected, but also constrained by tradition and expectations. Feast days bring special celebrations that break the monotony of daily labor. The church calendar is filled with saints' days, each with its particular traditions, foods, and observances. These punctuate the year like bright threads through plain fabric. Perhaps today is a minor saint's day, bringing small customs, special prayers, traditional foods, or simple decorations. Major feasts like Christmas or Easter involve elaborate preparations, special clothes brought out from storage, food saved and preserved specifically for the occasion. These celebrations are far from the commercial holidays of modern times. Their significance is deeply woven into both religious practice and agricultural cycles. Thanksgiving for harvest, prayers for fertility, marking the turning of seasons. After the morning's activities, you return to your dwelling. If it's washing day, a monthly rather than weekly affair for most, you face hours of physically demanding work. Laundry in medieval times is no simple task. First, water must be carried from the well or stream, bucket by heavy bucket. Then it must be heated in your largest pot over the fire, a slow process requiring constant attention to maintain the right temperature. Soap, if you have it, is a soft brownish substance made from animal fat and lye, caustic and rough on both clothes and hands. More commonly, you might use soapwort, a plant whose roots create a gentle lathering effect when crushed and steeped in water. Washing involves hours of scrubbing, rinsing, wringing, and spreading garments to dry on bushes or lines. The physical labor is intense, clothing is heavy when wet, and every drop of water has been carried and heated by hand. This is why undergarments might be washed relatively frequently, while outer clothing is brushed and aired, but rarely subjected to full washing. Your nose has adapted to a different standard of clean than modern sensibilities would accept. As afternoon progresses, you might turn to mending, another constant task in a world where clothing is precious and made to last for years. By the light from your open door, you stitch patches over worn areas, darn holes in stockings, or reinforce seams coming apart. Your sewing implements are simple but effective. Bone or wooden needles, thread you've spun yourself, scissors if you're fortunate, or simply a sharp knife to cut thread. Your stitches are neat and small, a point of pride in your handiwork. Children learn these skills by watching and helping from an early age. A girl of 7 might already be quite proficient at simple sewing tasks, while boys learn the craft of their fathers through similar apprenticeship. Education in medieval times happens through doing, rather than formal schooling for most people. Knowledge is passed directly from experienced hands to novice ones, from one generation to the next, in an unbroken chain of practical wisdom. As the afternoon wanes, you might gather with neighbors for a communal task, perhaps processing flax, which requires multiple steps and is easier done in company. The plant must be retted, soaked, dried, broken, scutched, beaten, and hackled, combed, before it can be spun into linen thread. Work that might be tedious alone becomes almost festive in company. Stories are told, songs sung, problems shared and solved. The social aspect of labor is as important as the product, building bonds that sustain community through hardship. Young people use these gatherings for courtship, exchanging glances and small conversations under the watchful eyes of elders. Marriage in medieval times is as much economic partnership as romantic union, bringing together compatible skills and resources for survival. Arranged matches are common, though not always forced. Parents and community elders have significant input into who marries whom, considering factors like health, work ethic, family connections, and economic prospects, rather than just affection. The working day begins to wind down as the sun lowers toward the horizon. Animals must be brought in, secured for the night against predators both animal and human. Chickens roost, pigs return to their pens, perhaps a cow or goat is led back from common grazing areas. The evening meal preparation begins, similar to midday but perhaps simpler. Leftover pottage might be reheated with the addition of herbs or vegetables from your garden. An egg might be added for protein if your hens have been productive. Your garden is a source of constant small harvests. A few leaves of cabbage taken without harvesting the whole plant, herbs snipped as needed, root vegetables pulled when they reach adequate size. This continuous selective harvesting maximizes your food supply. Families gather as daylight fades, drawn to the hearth's warmth and light. The fire is the center of home life, cooking, heating, and illumination all coming from this single source. Tending it properly is a skill learned early and practiced with care. The evening brings a different quality of time. Work slows, becomes more social. Tasks that can be done by firelight, carving, mending, preparing food for the next day, continue. But the pace is gentler as tired bodies begin to rest. Storytelling flourishes in these hours. Without books or other entertainment, oral tradition carries history, practical knowledge, moral lessons, and pure entertainment from one generation to the next. You might know hundreds of stories, songs, and rhymes by heart. Children listen wide-eyed to tales of saints and heroes, absorbing cultural values and expectations along with the narrative. These stories shape their understanding of the world and their place in it, as surely as any formal education. Bedtime approaches with the deepening darkness. The day has been long, filled with physical labor and simple pleasures. Sleep comes easily to bodies tired from meaningful work, though your rest might be interrupted by the needs of young children or restless animals. As you settle onto your straw mattress, pulling rough blankets around you, you might reflect briefly on the day's accomplishments: bread baked, garden tended, mending completed. Small victories in the constant work of survival, satisfying in their tangible results. Medieval sleep patterns often differed from modern ones. Without artificial lighting extending the day, people frequently slept in two segments: first sleep and second sleep, with a period of wakefulness between during which quiet conversation or contemplation might occur. Dreams come quickly, perhaps filled with practical concerns or influenced by the stories told that evening. Your body repairs itself during these precious hours of rest, preparing for another day of physical demands. Morning arrives again with familiar sounds, roosters crowing, animals stirring, the early risers of the village already moving about their tasks. Another day in the medieval cycle begins. Today might bring different weather. Rain, perhaps, changing the texture of your day. Roads turn to mud, making travel difficult. Water drips through thatched roofs, requiring buckets placed strategically to catch leaks. Wet weather brings its own tasks and challenges. Damp clothing must be dried near the fire. Extra firewood must be brought inside to stay dry for future use. Work shifts to indoor activities where possible: spinning, weaving, food processing. The weight of a medieval rainstorm is different from modern experience. Without waterproof clothing or buildings, without paved roads or drainage systems, rain transforms your world more profoundly, seeping into every aspect of daily life. Yet rain also brings joy, filling wells and streams, nourishing crops, clearing the air of dust and smoke. You've learned to work with weather rather than fight against it, adapting your activities to its rhythms and demands. If today is market day in a nearby larger town, you might make the journey despite the weather. Travel is primarily by foot for common folk. A horse or cart is a luxury beyond most means. A journey of 5 miles might take 2 hours each way on muddy paths. The larger market offers goods not available in your village, perhaps imported items brought by merchants from distant cities, specialized tools made by craftspeople with rare skills, or simply a greater variety of local products gathered in one place. You wear your best clothing for such an excursion, not fancy by modern standards, but cleaner and less patched than everyday wear. Appearance matters in medieval society, marking your status and respectability within the strict social hierarchy. The journey gives you rare glimpses of the wider world, perhaps passing by the manor house where local nobility resides, seeing travelers from distant places, hearing news and rumors from beyond your usual circles. The manor dominates the local landscape, both physically and socially. If you're a peasant, you likely owe service to the lord who owns these lands. A certain number of days working his fields, a portion of your own harvest, or specialized products like eggs or cloth. This feudal relationship shapes much of medieval life for common folk. The lord provides protection and the right to work the land. In return, peasants provide labor, goods, and loyalty. It's an unequal exchange by modern standards, but forms the foundation of medieval society. At market, you navigate crowded stalls, each vendor calling out their wares. Fish from coastal regions, wool from upland areas, pottery, ironwork, woodcraft. Goods flow from their places of production to points of exchange in a complex economic web. You might sell your own products, perhaps excess thread you've spun, vegetables from your garden, or eggs from your hens. The small coins earned are precious, saved for taxes or to purchase necessities you cannot produce yourself. The market is also an information exchange. News travels with merchants, political developments, weather in other regions, outbreaks of illness, remarkable events. In a world without mass communication, this person-to-person transmission is how knowledge spreads. You listen carefully to such reports, assessing what might affect your community. Will grain prices rise due to poor harvests elsewhere? Are troops being mustered, suggesting potential conflict? Has a new bishop been appointed who might change church policies? After concluding your business, you begin the journey home, perhaps joining with neighbors for company and safety. Roads can be dangerous for solitary travelers, with outlaws targeting those carrying market goods or money. Arriving home with your purchases and earnings, you're greeted by family eager to hear about your journey and see what you've brought. Even small luxuries, a ribbon, a new knife, a rare spice, are cause for excitement in a world where material possessions are few but valued. The next day might bring different work. Perhaps it's time for preserving seasonal abundance for the lean months ahead. Fruits are dried in the sun or near the fire, vegetables pickled in vinegar or salt brine, meat smoked or salted to prevent spoilage. Food preservation is crucial in a world without refrigeration. The abundance of summer and fall must stretch to feed you through winter and spring. Techniques developed over centuries ensure that little is wasted, though variety diminishes as stored foods replace fresh. Your knowledge of these methods is comprehensive and practical. Exactly how long to soak cabbage in brine, the precise color that indicates properly smoked meat, the best methods for storing root vegetables in sand or straw to prevent rotting. This practical wisdom extends to medicine as well. While serious illness might call for a physician in larger towns, daily healthcare is largely in the hands of women, using herbs and remedies passed down through generations. Your garden includes medicinal plants alongside food crops: chamomile for sleep and digestion, comfrey for wounds, feverfew for headaches, mint for stomach ailments. You know when to harvest each for maximum potency and how to prepare them as teas, poultices, or tinctures. For common ailments, these remedies can be effective. Modern science has confirmed the medicinal properties of many traditional herbs, but for serious conditions, medieval medicine offered little help, relying heavily on prayer alongside physical treatments. This reliance on faith extends beyond medicine to all aspects of life. The supernatural seems more present in your medieval world. Saints intercede in daily affairs, angels and demons might influence events, blessed objects offer protection. Yet alongside this spiritual understanding runs a practical, earthbound wisdom. Medieval people are not naive or simplistic in their worldview, but blend religious explanation with careful observation of natural causes and effects. You know that moldy bread causes illness, that certain plants heal while others harm, that animals show signs before weather changes. This empirical knowledge, gathered over generations, guides your actions as surely as any religious teaching. The changing seasons bring different work and celebrations. Summer means long days in the fields, harvesting grain that forms the basis of your diet. Fall brings the pressing of apples for cider, the slaughter of animals that cannot be fed through winter, the gathering of nuts and late fruits. Winter sees work move largely indoors, spinning, weaving, repairing tools and equipment, preserving food through smoking and salting. Spring brings planting, cleaning, preparation for the cycle to begin again. Each season has its festivals, marking agricultural milestones and religious observances. Midsummer celebrations with bonfires and dancing, harvest festivals giving thanks for successful crops, winter solstice marking the year's darkest point with lights and feasting, spring celebrations of renewal and fertility. These festivals provide not just religious observance, but crucial psychological relief from the constant work of survival. They strengthen community bonds, reaffirm shared values, and offer moments of joy in lives often marked by hardship. The medieval year moves through these cycles with a rhythm both demanding and reassuring. There is comfort in knowing what comes next, in following patterns established over centuries, in belonging to an unbroken chain of human experience. Weather brings its own rhythm to medieval life: the deep snow of winter, the muddy thaw of spring, the dust and heat of summer, the mists and shortening days of autumn. Each condition presents its own challenges and opportunities, shaping your activities and even your mood. On a snowy winter day, you might wake to a transformed world, the usual browns and grays of your village now blanketed in pristine white. The silence is striking, a muffled quality to all sounds, as if the world itself is holding its breath. Your first tasks are practical: clearing paths to essential areas, breaking ice on water sources, checking that livestock are protected from the cold. Snow is beautiful, but dangerous in a world where survival depends on constant effort. The hearth fire becomes even more central to life during winter. Family members gather close, conserving heat and light. Work is done in this tight circle: spinning wool, carving wood, mending tools, telling stories to pass the long, dark hours. Food becomes simpler in winter. Stored root vegetables, preserved meats, dried fruits, and grains form the backbone of meals. Fresh greens are a distant memory until spring brings new growth. Your body craves variety, but adapts to what's available. The cold seeps through walls and under doors despite your best efforts. Multiple layers of clothing, shared body heat, and strategic placement near the fire are your main defenses. Modern concepts of room temperature would seem an unimaginable luxury. Yet winter brings joys as well. Special foods saved for festivals like Christmas, communal activities like storytelling and music making, the beauty of frost patterns on window panes, the exhilaration of sledding down hillsides on simple wooden boards. Children fashion snowballs and crude snow figures, their laughter a bright counterpoint to the season's harshness. Even in the midst of survival concerns, play finds its way into medieval life, a necessary outlet for human creativity and joy. As spring approaches, you watch eagerly for the first signs: snowdrops pushing through melting snow, longer daylight hours, the return of birds that migrated south. These harbingers of change are noted and celebrated after winter's long grip. Spring brings its own intense work, plowing and planting fields, cleaning winter's accumulation of smoke and grime from dwellings, repairing damage caused by winter storms and freezes. But there's energy for these tasks, fueled by the season's promise of renewal. The first fresh greens of spring are treasured additions to your diet: tender dandelion leaves, wild garlic, young nettles harvested with careful hands. After winter's preserved foods, these bitter, vibrant plants taste of life itself. Spring festivals celebrate fertility and new beginnings. Eggs decorated with natural dyes, branches of early blooming trees brought indoors, special breads shaped into figures representing growth and abundance. These customs blend Christian and older pagan traditions seamlessly. As the ground warms, you work in rhythm with neighbors, sharing draft animals for plowing if you're fortunate enough to have access to them. More commonly, human power drives wooden plows through soil being prepared for planting. Seeds are precious resources, saved carefully from previous harvests or traded with neighbors to maintain diversity and resilience. You plant with prayer and practical knowledge combined, observing moon phases, soil conditions, and traditional timing. Summer arrives with lengthening days and increasing heat. Work moves outdoors from dawn until dusk, taking advantage of extended daylight. The growing season demands constant attention: weeding, watering during dry spells, protecting crops from pests and wildlife. Your clothing adjusts to the season, still modest by modern standards, but perhaps reduced to a lighter linen undertunic with sleeves rolled up while working. Head coverings remain important, protecting from sun as well as maintaining propriety. Summer meals incorporate the first fresh produce: early peas, young turnips, berries from woodland edges. These fresh foods are treasured additions to the staples of bread and preserved proteins that form the foundation of your diet year-round. Heat brings its own challenges. Food spoils quickly, water sources may diminish, physical labor becomes more taxing. You adapt by working during cooler morning and evening hours when possible, storing perishables in the coolest parts of your dwelling, and finding shade for brief rest periods. The summer solstice might be marked with bonfires and celebration, acknowledging the sun's peak before its slow decline toward winter. These seasonal markers help structure the year psychologically as well as practically. Autumn brings the year's most intense work period, harvesting grains that will sustain you through winter, gathering fruits and nuts, slaughtering animals that cannot be fed during winter months. Every able-bodied joins this crucial labor, from children to elders. The rhythm of harvesting has developed over centuries. Cut grain dries in sheaves before threshing separates valuable kernels from straw. The work is backbreaking but communal, neighbors helping each other ensure that nothing is lost to early frost or rain. Threshing itself is exhausting labor, using flails to beat dried grain until kernels separate from husks, then winnowing by tossing the mixture into the air so breeze carries away lighter chaff while heavier grain falls back to the threshing floor. The precious grain is stored carefully in raised granaries protected from rodents and damp. These stores represent security against winter hunger, their level noted anxiously, and consumption measured carefully to ensure they last until next harvest. Autumn also brings food preservation at its most intense. smoking meats from animals slaughtered before winter, making cheeses that will age through coming months, drying fruits, pickling vegetables, brewing beer or cider from seasonal abundance. This work is typically divided by gender, with women managing most food preservation while men handle slaughtering, smoking meats, and brewing. The division is practical rather than arbitrary. Each gender specializes in skills learned from same-sex elders. Harvest festivals mark the successful completion of this crucial work, perhaps the most important celebrations in the agricultural year. Feasting, music, dancing, and Thanksgiving prayers acknowledge both divine blessing and human effort in securing another year's survival. Special foods mark these celebrations: bread baked from new grain, roasted meats from freshly slaughtered animals, pies filled with autumn fruits. These foods represent the year's abundance before the careful rationing of winter begins. Throughout all seasons, hygiene follows patterns very different from modern standards. Bathing the entire body is rare, perhaps a few times a year at most, often coinciding with major festivals or seasonal changes. More common is washing of hands, face, and feet, the parts most exposed to dirt and most socially visible. A basin of water, perhaps warmed by the fire, serves for this daily or semi-daily cleansing. Teeth are cleaned with frayed twigs, rubbed against enamel to remove food particles. Certain herbs like mint might be chewed for fresher breath, but dental problems are common: abscesses, decay, and eventual tooth loss accepted as natural parts of aging. Hair care involves occasional washing but more frequent combing to remove tangles and pests. Lice are common enough to be unremarkable. Combs with fine teeth help control but rarely eliminate these unwelcome companions. Clothing is aired rather than frequently washed, hung near fragrant herbs or smoked to refresh it. Undergarments might be washed more often, while outer layers are brushed to remove visible soil and worn until truly in need of laundering. By modern standards, medieval people would seem malodorous, but contemporary noses are accustomed to these scents: the smell of wood smoke in clothing, the natural odors of unwashed bodies, the background notes of animals and their wastes. Only extreme or unusual smells would register as offensive. Your sense of smell is actually more acute than modern people's, not dulled by artificial scents and environmental pollution. You can detect subtle changes that might indicate food spoilage or illness. Speaking of illness, medical care in your medieval world blends practical knowledge with spiritual understanding. Minor ailments are treated at home with herbal remedies, rest, and dietary adjustments. More serious conditions might call for a physician if available and affordable. Medical theory is based on the concept of humors, 4 bodily fluids: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, that must remain in balance for good health. Treatments aim to restore this balance through diet, herbal remedies, or more invasive methods like bloodletting. Surgery is performed without anesthesia beyond alcohol or opium derivatives, making it a last resort for desperate conditions. Successful surgeons are known for their speed as much as their skill, minimizing the patient's conscious suffering. Childbirth occurs at home, attended by midwives whose knowledge has been passed down through generations of women. Their practical skills often result in successful deliveries, though complications can quickly become life-threatening without modern interventions. Recovery from illness or injury takes its natural course, without antibiotics or pain management beyond herbal remedies. A simple cut might take weeks to heal. Broken bones might never set perfectly. The body's resilience is respected, but its limitations acknowledged. Prevention focuses on maintaining overall health through balanced diet, adequate rest, and moderation in all things. The concept of specific disease prevention is limited, though some connections between conditions and causes are empirically understood. Mental health is viewed through religious and communal lenses rather than medical ones. Melancholy might be treated with herbs that modern science confirms have mild antidepressant properties. More severe conditions might be attributed to spiritual causes. Throughout all aspects of medieval life, community remains essential to survival. No single household can produce everything needed. Specialization and exchange create an interdependent web of skills and resources. The blacksmith's work is vital, creating and repairing metal tools that make all other work possible. This skilled craftsman holds special status, his forge a hub of activity where news is exchanged along with services. The miller processes grain into flour, typically taking a percentage as payment. Water or wind power drives the heavy millstones, representing technology that lightens human labor in one of the few areas where mechanization exists. Carpenters create everything from furniture to building frames, working with locally harvested wood using hand tools that require strength and precision. Their products last for generations, repaired rather than replaced when damaged. Weavers transform thread into cloth on looms that represent significant investment in equipment. Their skill determines the quality and character of fabric that becomes clothing, household textiles, and items for trade. These specialized trades complement the agricultural work that occupies most people. Together, they create a functioning community where mutual dependence is recognized and valued. Social gatherings strengthen these community bonds. Not just formal festivals, but smaller, more frequent interactions. Women might gather to spin while sharing childcare duties. Men might repair tools together during winter evenings. Young people find opportunities for supervised socializing that might lead to marriage. Marriage itself is a community affair rather than just a union of individuals. The compatibility of families matters as much as personal preference. Economic considerations, what resources and skills each person brings to the union, are openly discussed and evaluated. Wedding celebrations reflect this community investment, with the entire village often participating in feasting and rituals that publicly mark the new relationship. Gifts are practical, household items, foodstuffs, tools, rather than decorative. Children born to the marriage belong in some sense to the community as well as to parents. They're raised with clear expectations about their future roles, learning skills through observation and increasing participation rather than formal education. Education for most medieval children means practical apprenticeship in life skills, farming, crafts, household management, rather than academic learning. Literacy is limited primarily to clergy and nobility, with perhaps merchants and craftspeople having basic reading ability for practical purposes. For those showing academic promise and whose families can spare them from labor, church schools provide basic literacy centered on religious texts. Latin is taught alongside reading, as the language of church and scholarship. Universities exist in major cities, but these are for a tiny minority. Primarily young men preparing for careers in church, law, or royal administration. Their curriculum focuses on theology, philosophy, law, and medicine rather than practical sciences. The medieval worldview integrates the spiritual and material in ways unfamiliar to modern thinking. Saints and angels are as real as neighbors, their intervention sought through prayer and ritual. The division between natural and supernatural that shapes modern thought doesn't exist in the same way. Yet this doesn't mean medieval people are superstitious in the dismissive modern sense. Their understanding combines careful observation of natural processes with spiritual explanation of underlying causes, a complex worldview that acknowledges both physical evidence and divine influence. This worldview shapes how you understand everything from weather to illness to social hierarchy. Storms might be natural phenomena while also expressing divine displeasure. Sickness follows exposure to certain conditions while potentially serving as spiritual testing or punishment. The social order itself is seen as divinely ordained. The three estates of those who pray, clergy, those who fight, nobility, and those who work, peasants and craftspeople, each with their proper place and function in a cosmic plan. This doesn't mean accepting injustice without question. Peasant revolts occur when conditions become unbearable, when taxation or labor demands exceed what communities can bear. The concept of fair treatment within one's station exists alongside acceptance of the station itself. Daily life unfolds within this complex framework of practical needs and spiritual understanding. You rise with the sun or church bells, work with your hands in coordination with neighbors, eat food you've helped produce, and sleep under a roof you've helped maintain. Your identity is inseparable from your community role: daughter, wife, mother, spinner, gardener, neighbor. Individual aspirations in the modern sense are largely foreign to medieval thinking, where belonging and fulfilling one's proper function matter more than personal development. Yet within these parameters, there's room for individual character to express itself. In the quality of your work, in your reputation for generosity or wisdom, in the stories you tell or songs you sing, in the small creative touches you add to necessary objects. Clothing, while primarily functional, might include embroidered details or carefully chosen colors within the range available to your status. A wooden spoon might be carved with decorative patterns beyond what's needed for its use. Practical beauty emerges from necessary work. Music fills daily life, not as performance but as accompaniment to work and celebration. Songs help coordinate group labor, preserve historical knowledge, teach moral lessons, and simply express joy or sorrow. Everyone participates rather than dividing into performers and audience. Similar participatory spirit marks religious observances. While the priest leads formal services, religious practice extends far beyond church walls into daily rituals, seasonal celebrations, and communal expressions of faith that blur the line between official and folk religion. Your medieval world is one of embodied experience, physical labor, tangible materials, direct sensory engagement with your environment. The abstract thinking that characterizes much of modern life has its place primarily in religious contemplation rather than daily activity. This physicality connects you directly to the sources of your survival: the soil that grows your food, the animals that provide wool and leather, the plants that become medicine, the fire that cooks and warms. There's little separation between production and consumption. Modern visitors to your world might be struck first by what seems like hardship: the physical demands, the lack of privacy, the limited material goods, the omnipresent smells and dirt. But they might eventually notice something else: a coherence and integration often missing from contemporary life. Your work has clear purpose and visible results. Your community relationships are based on genuine interdependence rather than convenience. Your understanding of the world, while limited by modern standards of scientific knowledge, provides meaningful explanations and guidelines for living. This isn't to romanticize medieval hardship or ignore the very real sufferings of your world: hunger during crop failures, untreatable diseases, vulnerability to violence, limited opportunities for changing one's circumstances. These hardships are genuine and often devastating. Yet there's a wholeness to medieval life that merits consideration: the integration of work and meaning, the embeddedness in community and place, the connection between human activity and natural cycles, the blending of practical and spiritual understanding into a coherent worldview. As dusk falls on another day in your medieval life, you might sit by the hearth fire, its warm light illuminating the faces of family members. Perhaps you're carding wool, preparing it for spinning, while listening to stories told by an elder or songs sung by a neighbor who stopped to visit. The firelight creates a small circle of warmth and light in the gathering darkness, a metaphor perhaps for human life itself, creating meaning and community in a world that can be harsh and unpredictable. This moment of connection, of shared experience and purpose, transcends the specific challenges of medieval existence. Tomorrow will bring another day of physical labor, of negotiating the complex social web of village life, of producing what's needed for survival. But tonight, in this moment of rest and companionship, there's a contentment that doesn't depend on material abundance or technological convenience. This contentment, born of necessary work completed, of simple needs met, of community bonds affirmed, represents something valuable that has become harder to find in modern life, despite all its advantages and comforts. It speaks to basic human needs for purpose, connection, and meaning that transcend historical context. As you eventually settle onto your straw mattress for the night, pulling rough blankets around you against the chill, your medieval day ends much as it began, in a world both utterly different from modern experience and yet connected to it through the continuity of human needs, challenges, and aspirations. The darkness that surrounds you is profound, unbroken by artificial light. Stars shine with a brilliance rarely seen in modern light-polluted skies. This darkness connects you to the rhythms of the natural world in ways modern people have largely forgotten. Your medieval dreams might not be so different from those of people centuries later. Images of loved ones, anxieties about tomorrow's challenges, fragments of stories heard by firelight. The human mind creates its own landscapes regardless of historical context. And when morning comes again with the tolling of church bells or the crowing of roosters, you'll rise to continue the ancient human project of creating meaning and sustaining life. Your particular version shaped by medieval conditions, but connected to both past and future through this shared endeavor. What might we learn looking back across centuries at your medieval life? Perhaps that human adaptability is remarkable, creating functional societies under conditions that might seem impossible to those accustomed to modern comforts. That community is not a luxury but a necessity for survival. That meaning can be found in the most basic activities when they directly sustain life. Perhaps most importantly, that our modern lives, for all their technological advancement and material abundance, still rest on the foundation laid by countless generations of people like you, people who built civilizations one loaf of bread, one woven cloth, one planted field, one raised child at a time. Your medieval world, with all its limitations and hardships, its moments of beauty and connection, its practical wisdom and spiritual framework, represents not just a historical curiosity, but a phase in our shared human journey, different from our present in countless ways yet connected to it through the continuity of basic human needs and aspirations. As we imagine ourselves walking in your medieval shoes, feeling the rough wool against our skin, tasting the dense bread, smelling the smoke and earth and animals that form your sensory landscape, we might find not just appreciation for modern conveniences but recognition of what remains constant in human experience across the centuries: the need for sustenance, shelter, community, and meaning. In that recognition lies a kind of wisdom, an understanding that while the specific forms of human life change dramatically across time, its fundamental substance remains remarkably consistent. Your medieval day, so different from our modern one in its external details, still contains the essential elements of human experience that connect us across the centuries. If this peek into medieval misery made you grateful for your toothbrush, give this video a thumbs up. It helps more than a medieval doctor ever could. Subscribe if you want more uncomfortable truths about history, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next time we time travel somewhere equally questionable. And hey, drop a comment below. Would you rather face a dragon or medieval plumbing? Be honest.